here at Shires Distillery in Williamsburg, Virginia. It doesn't look like much. You really wouldn't find much in this little space. You know, it's kind of in the middle of nowhere.
Right this way. This is our museum. Just real quick, this is the still made for us. We did use this in the very beginning. Shires was started in 2014. We were the 7th distillery in the state of Virginia. And since that, actually in the amount of time, the number of distilleries went from 7 to currently it's at 71. That's 10 years. It's incredible growth no matter how you look at it. Again, we're all different.
Right.
You have Copper Fox right up the road. They're really experimental. They've tried some really interesting things, and I admire their sense of experimentation. And Ironclad is another close one. They're off of, they're on Newport News, hyper focused on bourbon, run by the King family, wonderful people. If you go to any other distillery, just tell them Tucker says hello. Okay. Tucker from Shires. You're not going to get a discount or anything. You might get an eye roll or two. It's like, oh, this guy again. But you know, we're a happy family.
Shires, is that, do you focus on something that's historical since you're here in Williamsburg? Do you follow a specific historical, a recipe or something, or do you focus on your own little thing?
Well, we find our own little thing in the history.
Okay.
For example, our most recent release is something called Uskaba. No one else makes Uskaba. It's a lost recipe. No one's interested in making it anymore. But we found a recipe. It was written by a guy named George Smith in 1766. We followed his recipe. We used some ingredients that are just lost forever. Others were harder to find, but we made it work. And we were able to put together this recipe that literally no one else in the world is making.
And how many times did it take to get it where you felt that it was Shires quality?
That's a great question. Well, I don't know how many times, but it took years.
Okay.
And it was one of these things where there's a lot of time spent in that formula stage where you're just sitting down pouring over, you know, the existing material and like trying to translate it into modern stuff. And if, for example, there's a pepper that's in there, it's called kubub. It used to be like what we use black pepper for today. Black pepper has replaced that niche in our minds, in the zeitgeist, in the culinary world, but it's still available. But was it the authentic original stuff? So you call, you make, you know, inquiries, you order little bits, samples, you test it. You know, that's the formula stage. It takes quite some time, months and months, if not literal years. Then you start making it. And you say, well, this was a popular item in 1766. Is it going to translate to today's palate? So you try it. And you know, maybe you make an alteration here or there. Maybe you're like, well, maybe we'll increase the fruit side of things instead of the spice side of things. So you add more figs, more dates, something to make it more palatable to the modern, you know, customer. So there's little changes you make, but you still stay as authentic as you can. Then you bottle it and you put it on the shelf and you wait for that response. And we've had a great response from anyone who's tried our Uskaba. It's very, very different. So
tell me about the actual time frame from when you sit down and say, I want to use this recipe or I want to come up with a recipe until it actually, the first commercial sip of someone at that bar gets to sip it. What's the time frame?
It varies. It varies from product to product. And one of the most significant factors of what time is if that product has to be aged or not. Our brandy is very authentic, and usually it takes years to make a brandy because most brandies today are aged. Well, back in the day, they weren't. So that's the opposite. It's actually much quicker to make a brandy authentic to the 1700s because you don't have to go through the aging process. There's no written recipe. If you're making bourbon, you're following very specific steps from the grain to the bottle, literally. But if you're remaking a brandy from the 1600s where they didn't have any rules, well, you can imagine it speeds it up quite a bit. So to answer your question, depends on what product we're working on. An aged product, literal years. A more something that doesn't have to go through the aging process, something that you can literally like distill, proof, and bottle. It can take a matter of weeks. Again, it's the research that takes the most time.
All right, so this unit here is a 21st century piece of, is it like an alien spacecraft? What, you know, because it looks like it should be landing on the moon. First of all, what would the out the door price from the supplier that you paid for? What was the price to buy that? 30,000, 50,000, 200,000?
I think it was just short of 100,000.
Okay. And then installation, because you just can't bring that in and get Joe and the two guys at the bar to put it together.
Right, you can't exactly fill this in the back of a pickup truck.
Yeah.
And it was imported from China as well.
Okay.
So you were talking about, there was a pretty penny to get started as far as the stills are concerned.
Well, it's first of all, it's gorgeous. It's beautiful. And then so you call Joe's Plumbing Service to come in to plumb this? Who puts this together?
Well, most of the time, yes, you would. But our founder is actually an electrical engineer, and he's a brilliant man. So he was the one who actually put all this stuff together.
Okay.
He designed it. Let me put it that way. We did bring in. I mean, if someone else had to solder the pipes, etc.
Right.
But he was the one that put this all together. He modified it. They don't come. That's what I love about. This is what's called a column still. Sometimes they're called a continuous still. Depends how you set them up. And one of the things I love about them is, yes, they're super modern, but you can modify them to do almost anything. We added a motor on the back so you can have beaters. You can see that inside, so we can mix up the mash. The mash is the recipe, the actual grains and the water you start with. You got to cook them. And if you've ever burnt oatmeal on the side of a pot or pan at home, can you imagine trying to clean one of these things off?
All right, and then you have some classic old barrels here too.
Our open air fermentation tanks. In fact, I believe one of them has a batch going right now.
Okay. Oh, so that looks kind of interesting. So the crumbles around the top there, is that just and it looks like things are coming up out of the bottom too.
Yep, it's a
bubbles.
It's fermenting as we speak.
Okay.
On Saturday we filled that with a cool sugary grainy liquid called a wort that we made by boiling grains in this unit here. So you take your grains and you boil them in here, and this is a still, but we're using it as what's called a mash tun. Mash tun is where you cook your grains, and mash is your recipe. So we put our corn, our wheat, and our malted barley in here, and we cooked it all day, 8 hours plus.
And when you say cook, what's the temperature?
212 degrees.
Okay.
Boiling plus a little bit, because we do actually seal it up like a big old pressure cooker. And the reason is we want all those carbohydrates in those grains to gelatinize, because when you add malted barley, there's natural enzymes in there that turn them all into sugar. And sugar is what yeast eats to make alcohol. But that's not until this step here. When it's done cooking, we pump it into this tank. We fill it with our wort, W-O-R-T, which just means a sugary, grainy liquid. We then add the yeast, and the yeast has two jobs: turn the sugar to alcohol and make baby yeast. And it's very good at both those things, because by the end of that day, the entire batch is bubbling, it's churning, you can feel heat coming off the top. It's actually a little dramatic. Now, it's been since Saturday, that's why it's calmer now, but that yeast is still in there working. Every so often you're going to get a bubble, a little bit of CO2 from that respiration. You're going to see, and when it bubbles, that's where all some of the material gets stuck on the sides. That's what you were asking about earlier. So that was how active it was. That's how high up those bubbles were coming. I mean, let's say like a couple inches, 3-4 inches. And like I said, it gets a little dramatic. When it's ready, which will be about 7 days from Saturday, so maybe next Saturday, maybe even the Tuesday following, because you want to give it a little extra time. Maybe the yeast isn't done eating all the sugar yet. It's still in production. Well, when it's ready, we'll put it in that still, the smaller one across the way, around the corner, where we do the first run. We call that the stripping run, where we pull all the alcohol out we possibly can. What's left behind is a little bit of alcohol, you never get it all, a lot of water, some sugar, the spent yeast, and the grain matter that won't break down, cellulose, proteins, fiber. We put that all in a barrel. We call our friends at the hog farm. They come by and pick it up for us. It's a great relationship because they get free feed. Our waste is hauled away for nothing. We're a zero waste facility here at Shires. We're proud of that. And the pigs get to eat the stuff, so everybody wins.
Well, and that's environmentally friendly. And then these paddles up here, what are those paddles for?
Those are literally for mixing up both, well, they're good for mixing in when we're proofing, because you got to mix the water with the alcohol, okay, and you stir it up. Or if you're having trouble cleaning off the edges of the still, maybe it has some oatmeal on the side, or some of the mash stuck to it. Those work really well, and just scraping that off the edge. We then take what we pulled out that first time, that stripping run I mentioned. We put that back in. We do the spirit run. That's what gets the temperature, the proof rather, of the spirits back to where it belongs, and then we put it in a bourbon barrel. We bring it to our warehouse. We let it sit for, now it's like 7, 8, 9 years. We used to be much shorter, but we're older, more mature as a distillery. I like to think some of us are as well. Our spirits certainly are. And then when it's ready, we bring it back, we crack it open, we test it, we taste it, we proof it, we bottle it, sell it to fine folks like yourself.
Perfect. An interesting little space. Thank you for showing it to us.
Oh, of course.
And,
my pleasure.
Let's go ahead and take a test of what it is that you actually make and offer people.
Wonderful.
Who come here.
I'd love to.
Tell me what we have here, Tucker.
All right. Well, you are holding our Jamestown 1608. That's our flagship project right there. That's from our historical line. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm proud of everything we have on the shelf here.
And where is 1608 up here?
1608 is this one right here.
Right there. Okay, so let's just show that to the camera a little bit. There you go. Perfect.
It actually comes in.
And it's in a Jamestown bottle too. It looks like.
Yes. Yep. This was made from the Jamestown Glass House. We actually every piece of this is custom in some way.
Okay.
We work very closely with archaeologists, I mentioned earlier. Well, they found John Smith's original well, the first well dug in the New World in a permanent settlement. Well, they found all kinds of neat artifacts all the way through. You could check their website and see them. But at the bottom, they found water. And they didn't really know what to do with it. So how do you display water in a museum? I mean, I'm sure everyone could appreciate on some level, this is John Smith's water, right? Well, again, no one's lining up to take selfies with the old water in a jug sitting on a shelf. So you said, well, why don't we give it to those 8 Shires goofballs? Maybe they'll think of something cool to do with it.
And you're drinking something a little different.
This is our colonial line.
So this is a little lighter. That's a little darker.
That's right. This is not made with any special water. This is made with filtered municipal water.
Okay.
But it's made with the grains. Well, it's a single malt whiskey.
Right.
In the style you would have made back then. However, this is made with modern equipment. That's made with the same type of still they would have made back in the day.
So this was with the clay still, with the pottery still?
That was made with glass still heads.
Okay.
See, Jamestown found these broken remainders of these glass still heads around a section they called the factory back then. And we made replicas of those. Well, we took them to Corning, glass, I should say. And they made these replicas. I can actually show you one. It's around the corner. It's we donated a few to Jamestown, so they had something to display. At least we could do. They found the darn things, but we put ours to work, and we started asking questions. Well, we have John Smith's water, and he would have used a still like this. What type of grain would they have used? So we tracked one down. Today, we'd consider that to be an heirloom or antique style of single malt. And
so this is a single malt, right?
Yes.
Okay, so
it's made with one grain.
All right, one grain. And what is that grain?
Malted barley.
Malted barley. All right. So let me give it. So do I take just a sip of it, or do I do the whole thing?
I would take a sip. That's a $95 shot. So take your time. Sláinte.
Oh, interesting. It has a little bit of back into the throat. It's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. I mean, it's got a nice taste to it. It's got a nice aftertaste too.
It does. It's like a pat of butter on your tongue.
Oh yeah, butter is very good. It is very buttery.
Yep. And people ask, why is it so different? People who've gotten the chance to try it. And I don't have a single answer. Like I said, every piece of this is custom. It's made with an antique style of barley. It's made in a still no one else uses. It's made with water with a very different minerality than the typical water we have just around. So I think it's just a combination of all the above.
Well, cheers, folks. I encourage everyone to come here to 8 Shires, right outside of Williamsburg. Find Tucker and have a drink with him.
Looking forward to it.
Very nice. When you come to Williamsburg, Virginia, check out 8 Shires Distillery at 7218 Merrimack Trail, Williamsburg, Virginia, 23185. Or on the web, www.8shires.com. And that's the number 8. Check them out on Instagram too at instagram.com/number8 Shires Distillery. Come to taste their products, ask for Tucker, and who knows, you too may even get a behind-the-scenes distillery tour. Very educational to learn more about how spirits were made back in the day and today as well. Thank you for watching this episode of Q4Travel. Until next time.